Hey guys, welcome back to the 6th video of the Kotlin Android series, Kotlin Sudoku series. In this video we're going to add notes to our cells. It's going to be a bit of a longer video because we have to do a lot of changes to do this, but hopefully it will be interesting. So let's get started. First thing we need to do is edit our cell class and add support for notes. So this is just going to be var notes, mutable set int, and then mutable set of. Basically what we're doing here is just creating a set of notes, and we use a set because it makes sense. Basically sets can only have one of every element, so like you can only have 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, whatever, and it doesn't make sense to have multiple of the same note. So we'll just use a set. It makes it faster to add and remove things as well, because it uses hashing. Alright, next thing we're going to do is update our UI a little bit. We're going to add a button for turning on note taking. So first thing we need to do is go to the res folder and then the drawable folder, right click and do new vector asset, and then click this clip art thing here and then just type edit, and we're going to grab this edit icon here. We'll just call it edit pen black, and then just press next and press finish, and yep, okay, so we should have a drawable now. I'm not sure if your Android Studio will look the same as mine, but basically this is just showing that we have the drawable that we want. So let's actually update the layout now to use this. So we'll go to activity play Sudoku, and then remember we have this grid layout. Go all the way down to the bottom of the grid layout. We're going to add one more button, and we'll make it an image button instead of a regular button. If this loads, okay, and then we'll add the ID plus ID, and we'll just call this notes button. Then we'll copy this layout width, layout height, just like that. We'll add the layout row and the layout column. I'm just going to put this in the bottom left, so it'll be the third row now and the 0th column. And then we have app source compat, I think. Let's double check really quick. Yep, app source compat, and that will be an @drawable, and then edit pen black. Okay, that should do the trick. Perfect. And one more thing we need to change. Whoops. Oh boy. Okay, we just need to change the grid layout to actually have 4 rows now instead of 3. And then your design button is probably down here. I'm just gonna look at the one up here. I'm using the new beta Android Studio, so it looks a little bit different. All right, we're good to go. This is in the correct column now. We can probably no, let's just leave it for now. All right, let's see, what should we do next? We should change up the game logic now. So what we're going to do here is we're going to add 2 new live datas, one to tell the UI if we're in note-taking mode, and one to tell the UI what keys to highlight in note-taking mode. So we're going to highlight the keys basically that you've taken notes on the selected cell in. So to do this, let's just add a couple of live datas here. We'll have an is taking notes live data, and that'll just be a mutable live data, and it'll be a boolean. Then we also have highlighted keys live data, and that's again going to be a mutable live data, but this time it's going to be a set integers. So it's really just going to be the notes of the current cell. Let's get rid of these starting cells, and let's actually take one of the cells and set its notes to like 1 through 9. just so we have an example cell to look at once we start drawing stuff. And then in init, we should post this live data. Dot post value, and then we'll post is taking notes, which is a variable we haven't created yet. So basically, we'll store the state of whether or not we're taking notes in the Sudoku game, and then we'll post that down to the UI right when we start, so that it knows that it's false by default. All right, let's see. What do we need to do now? We need to handle input. So basically, we need to handle input in the case when we are taking notes and when we aren't taking notes. So the case we have right now is when we aren't taking notes. So let's just add this if check, and then the else check will go around the code that we already have. And we use this board.getCell a couple of times, so let's just pull this out into a variable. Just shorten up our code a little bit. Why not? Boom. Oh, nope. Should be cell. Okay. And then if we are taking notes, basically we want to remove from the notes set or add to it based on whether or not it's already there. So if the current cell contains the number, meaning that we've already taken the note for that, tapping that button to take the note again is actually just going to remove it. And then otherwise, it's not in there, so we're just basically adding the note. And that should be it. Sorry, it should just be cell. And then we want to post the new highlighted keys live data. And that's just going to be the notes. So basically, once we've updated the internal state of notes, we post it back to the UI, and it should update. And then in both cases, we're going to post the cells again, because the cells contain the notes as well. So we're just going to pull that outside of this whole if statement, because it's going to get called either way. Okay, now let's also do this, change this update selected cell part. Let's do the same thing we did before. Grab this and put it out into a variable. Don't forget your equal sign. And then we're good to go. And then what we want to do is, when we select a new cell, if we're taking notes, let's do the highlighted keys live data and post the value of the current cell. Because otherwise otherwise it's going to have the wrong notes in the keypad, basically. And then let's add one more function. This is going to be change note taking state. So this is basically when we click that that pen icon, it's going to change the state inside. So we'll take is taking notes, and we'll negate it. So we'll get, if it's true, it'll become false. If it's false, it'll become true. And then we'll post that value. It's taking notes. And then we'll do this. So what we're doing is we're saying, basically, if we're taking notes, let's grab the notes of the current cell. If we're not, then we'll grab the notes. We'll just grab an empty set of notes. This will basically if we go to a cell that isn't taking notes, if we go to a cell, if we change it to isn't taking notes, it's basically just gonna go back to normal. It'll take the keypad and put it back to normal. So we'll just post that to the highlighted keys live data. Okay, I think that's it for our Sudoku game logic changes. Now that was a lot. Make sure you pause and go back if you need to. Okay, Then let's also update the Play Sudoku activity to use our new button that we just added. So we added this button, we called it, I think, Notes button. So we need to set an on-click listener for that. And what we're going to do when we click that is just take the view model Sudoku game, like usual, and then we'll call that new method that we created, change note-taking state. Basically to tell the game, hey, we're taking notes now, or hey, we're not taking notes. It's just going to flip that. Alright, and then we added 2 new live datas. So we're going to do what we usually do and take those 2 new live datas, is taking notes live data, and then observe it and create a function to basically take that value and update our UI. And then we'll do the same thing but with highlighted keys, and we'll do update highlighted keys. All right. And actually, to update these highlighted keys, we actually need a reference to this list of buttons. So what I'm going to do is just create a new late init var, and we'll call it number buttons instead of buttons because we now have multiple buttons. So it's kind of ambiguous otherwise. Just a list of buttons, and then replace buttons with this, replace buttons, and that should do it. Okay. Let's see, what else? For some reason this is not highlighting correctly, which is really annoying. But I'm using the beta version of Android Studio, so that's probably why. So let's add our 2 new functions. Update selected cell, update note taking UI. And this takes a boolean, question mark, a nullable boolean because it's coming from this observer. And we'll just say is note taking question mark let. Basically, again, if you don't remember, this block will only get run if is note taking is not null, and then is note taking becomes the it inside this block. So basically, we're just saying only update if it's not null. And then if that's true, so if we are taking notes now, we'll do notes button dot set background color context compat dot get color this r dot color dot color primary. So this is gonna just take the regular color for the button. Otherwise, we're gonna do the same thing, but instead do light gray. So actually, sorry, this is going to be the default color. This is going to be the primary color, which will probably be blue because we haven't actually set that. Okay, one more function. Update highlighted keys. And this takes a set. Remember, it's nullable again. And we'll do the same trick. Set question mark let. And then for each number button, we're going to do a for each indexed. So this lets us iterate with the index of the element and the button itself. And we'll basically say the color is going to be dependent on if that note is in the set of notes. So if it's in the set of notes, we want the color to be blue, or the color primary. Otherwise, we want it to be gray. So what we'll do is the color if set.contains index plus 1, because the indexes start at 0, but our numbers start at 1. Then we're going to use this same exact color here. Otherwise, we'll just use light gray. And I think this is going to cause our UI to look a little bit gross, because it'll get rid of some like background stuff of the button. But I'll fix that in the next video. I just don't know how to do it off the top of my head. but you'll see what I'm talking about when we run the app. And then we'll set the button background color. All right, so I think that's it for the activity. Basically, all we did was set a click listener for the notes button, and then register 2 listeners to the new live data that we have. And then we have these update UI functions that tie into the live data. So all we have to do now is actually change up the Sudoku board view, our custom view, to handle notes. So let's do that. And I told you guys in the last couple of videos that we would fix the font sizing issues, and we're actually going to do that in this video. It's not too hard, so let's get started. What we need now is also a new variable here. This is going to be note size pixels, and it's going to be 0 for now. I'm going to add a comment here because it's kind of confusing, like why are the cells only 0 pixels and the note 0 pixels? It's not actually the case, it's just it doesn't get set until onDraw, because in onDraw we have a measurement for the size of the view, and this is going to depend on that. So we can't tell with certainty, like, hey, this is going to be, 10 pixels. It's going to be based on the actual width and height of the view. And we can't do late init vars because these are primitive values since they're floats. So we just do it like this. All right, let's see. Next thing we need to do, we're going to add a new paint, and this is going to be a note text paint. And we need a different one because it's really the same, but the font size itself is going to be a little bit different. And we can actually use the same, these 2 things from text paint, the same stuff. And then we can actually also get rid of the text sizes in here. Said we would do this, and we're doing it now. So onDraw gets called, and that's when we're going to update the size of the paints and also the cell size pixels and the note size pixels. So let's actually just create a helper function, we'll call it maybe update measurements, and we'll pass in the width to it. So we'll have this function, private function, helper function, update measurements, and it takes integer width, and then it's going to update all the paints and also this cell size pixels and the note size pixels. So let's just copy this guy over, and then we'll also update note size pixels, which is actually just going to be cell size pixels divided by square root size to float. Basically what this is saying is we have the size of our cells, and then the notes are going to fill their own like little grid inside inside the cell. So like the 1 will go in the top left, the 2 will go in the top middle, 3 will go in the top right, 4 will go in the middle left, etc. So we'll have like a grid of 1 through 9 inside the cell to determine the notes. And then we're going to update the actual paint sizes. So the note text paint is going to be cell size pixels divided by square root size to float. This is actually the same as the note size pixels. These are values that I've just kind of tweaked a little bit, but they're not just like straight up values. They're values in terms of cell size pixels. So I just tweaked them in order to get kind of the look that I want inside the cells. If you want them to be a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller, feel free to change this 1.5 float or like add some sort of multiplication to this just to scale it a little bit more. But the important thing is that it's relative to the cell size. So that way we're not creating text that's too big or too small. It's always going to be scaling with whatever the size of the screen is. All right, now that we've done this, we just have to update the draw text function. So let's go down here, draw text, where are you? Draw text. So right now we only have one case, we just draw the text in here. What we're going to do is we're only going to display notes when the value of a cell is 0. So let's actually just grab the cell value. let's actually change this it to cell. I think it's going to get a little confusing because we're going to have some nested iterators. So I'm just going to do that. And then what we'll do is, if the value is 0, we'll draw the notes. Otherwise, we'll just do what we were doing before, which is just drawing the actual number. But again, it makes no sense if we have zeros. You can't put zeros in a Sudoku grid. So we're just going to use 0 as like our empty value, and then when it is 0, we draw the notes if they're there. And then this should actually be cell as well. All right, so what we're going to do here, we're going to take our cell, take its notes, and iterate through all of them. So we do this with a for each loop, and we'll call this a note. All right, so now we need to determine the row and the column inside the cell. So like I said, 1 is going to be top left, 2 is going to be top middle, 3 is going to be top right, and then it's going to keep going. It's row major order, just like we did with our board. We have a one-dimensional list. Same kind of idea here. So let's do this. Row in cell is going to be note minus 1 divided by square root size. Since we're going to have square root size columns and rows inside each cell. And then we want these to be 0 indexed, so we're going to subtract off 1. Because again, the notes are going to be 1 through 9, but in order to do this computation, we want 0 indexed stuff. And we'll do call in cell. This will be note minus 1. But instead of dividing, we'll just take mod square root size. So this is going to be like dividing will tell you which row, and then modding will tell you what your offset is in the row. All right, then we need value string. Since we're doing this in both, let's just stick this guy out here. And then what we're going to do is, let's see, we need a text bounds again. Again, we're doing this with both. So let's just grab this text bounds and do that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use the note text paint. And we'll do get text bounds, just like we do in here. Value string 0 value string dot length text bounds. I know this is the same, but at this point we're using a different paint. Maybe if we did add more and more paints after this, I'll kind of make this generic, but it's not really that important right now. And then we'll get the text width. Note text paint dot measure text value string, and then the text height is going to be the same here, and then we're going to just draw in our canvas, draw text. Okay, we're going to draw the value string, and then what we need to do is we need to put it in, for x goes with column, so we need to go through the column, multiply it by the cell size pixels. Okay, that's going to put us at the start of that column. Then we're going to add call in cell times note size pixels. So we're going to offset so that it's at the start of the note size. And then we add half of that just to get to the middle of the note, and then we subtract off half the width of the text so that we get the middle of the text to be in the middle of where we want it to be. And we're going to do a very similar thing with our row calculation. So row goes with y in this case. So this is going to be row in cell. Still add this. But then a subtle thing is that we need to do plus text width divided by 2. And this is just because of how Android decides to draw text, basically. All right, and then we just put in the note text paint. Oh man. Note text paint. Okay. And then there's actually one small change we need to make. I actually messed up the code earlier for this. We didn't notice because the text was so small, it didn't really look that off-center. Well, it actually did look off-center, but I didn't really think about it. So let's just put these on separate lines first, just to clean it up a little bit. And then, like I said earlier, we need to do plus text height. Yeah, plus text height. And this should actually be text height here. So that was a mistake that I made, and a mistake that I made here as well. So yeah, let's run this code to see what happens. Yeah. Okay, so if you run that, it will not work, and there's a couple of bugs that I've found. First thing is go to the Gradle scripts here and go to the app build.gradle. We need to add this line, vector drawables.use support library equals true, and add that to the Android default config scope. That should fix the build error. And then there's one small bug with our board view. I decided to pull the value string out of here, which was a bad idea. So take this value string in the draw text function, go to the value string, take this, put it back in here, and then instead in here we'll do value string equals note.toString. And that should do it. So it was using all zeros for the notes instead of 1 through 9 because we were using the actual cell value, which is 0 when we display notes. So just run this one more time and we should see that it's working. Okay, so if we take a look at an emulator, you should see that we have cells 1 through 9 here, all good to go. When we select it, none of these get changed, but if we go to note-taking mode, it does. And we can remove these. Perfect. And we can do the same in these guys. And you can see how they get drawn in that grid fashion like I was talking about. And then also the text in these is a lot nicer and easier to read. Like I said, we kind of screwed up the formatting of the buttons, but I'll fix that in the next video. So thank you all for watching. Leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment if you have a question. And if your code doesn't work, feel free to grab it from GitHub. The link will be in the description.